The rain fell mercilessly over Chicago that autumn afternoon. Ryan observed the drop streaming down the window of his small apartment, while the coffee cooled on the table. Memories haunted him like ghosts that refused to leave. It had been 3 years since he left the army, but the marks remained, not just the visible ones on his skin, but especially those engraved in his soul. The phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Sarah, his younger sister, the only person who still insisted on bringing him back to the world of the living. "Ryan, are you okay? I stopped by the animal shelter today and I think you need to go there." The tone in Sarah's voice made his heart race. He knew exactly what it was about. "Thor, you saw Thor?" Ryan's voice trembled slightly as he pronounced that name. "I can't be sure, but I saw a German shepherd. He has those marks you described. Ryan, he's not doing well. The place is decent, but he seems different." Ryan felt the weight of those words. Thor had been more than a military dog. He was his extension, his shadow, his guardian on the darkest nights at the front. When they separated them, they promised Thor would receive the best treatment, a retirement worthy of a hero. The idea that his partner might be in a common shelter turned his stomach. "I'll check it out," he answered dryly, hanging up the phone. The journey to the shelter seemed endless. The rain had intensified, as if the sky shared his anguish. Ryan parked his car and remained motionless for a few minutes, gathering courage. What would he find in there? The loyal companion he had known, or just a shadow of him? The interior of the shelter was clean, but impersonal. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the sounds of distant barking. A middle-aged woman approached with a gentle smile. "Can I help you? I'm here to see a German shepherd. I believe he might have been a military dog." The woman's smile, Karen according to her badge, faded slightly. "Ah, yes. We received him a few weeks ago. Come with me." "Please." As they walked through the narrow corridors, Ryan avoided looking at the other animals. Each step echoed on the cold floor, amplifying his anxiety. When they reached the back of the shelter, Karen paused almost imperceptibly. "He's here. I should warn you that he's not very, receptive." Ryan nodded silently. When Karen opened the door to the last kennel, his heart stopped for an instant. There was Thor, lying in the corner, like a stone statue. His coat, once shiny, was now lifeless. But what disturbed Ryan most were his eyes. Those same eyes that once reflected unwavering loyalty were now empty, like windows of an abandoned house. "Thor," called Ryan, his voice almost a whisper. The dog raised his head slightly, but there was no recognition in his gaze. There wasn't that explosive joy Ryan had so hoped for, just a distant look, as if Thor were looking through him to a place Ryan couldn't reach. Ryan knelt slowly. The memory of Thor jumping on him after weeks of separation during military service contrasted painfully with that scene. He extended a trembling hand, allowing Thor to capture his scent. "It's me, buddy, Ryan." For a very brief moment, something changed in Thor's gaze. A flash of recognition, perhaps, like lightning cutting through the night sky and quickly disappearing. The dog approached cautiously, sniffing Ryan's extended hand. Karen observed the scene with interest. "Do you know each other?" "He was my partner in the army," replied Ryan without taking his eyes off Thor. "What happened to him? How did he end up here?" Karen's expression became serious. "He was brought in by a man who said he found him wandering near the military base. He was dehydrated, disoriented, but he didn't show physical injuries. His behavior, however..." Ryan felt a growing fury. Thor should have been in a specialized center, not abandoned like a disposable object. Something was wrong, very wrong. "I want to take him with me," he declared firmly. Karen hesitated. "There are procedures, sir, and I should warn you that he shows concerning behaviors. He has episodes, as if he were reliving something traumatic." Ryan looked again at Thor, who was now watching him with a disturbing intensity. It was as if the dog was desperately trying to communicate something that human words couldn't translate. "I'll fill out whatever is necessary. He's coming with me today." While Karen left to get the forms, Ryan remained with Thor. Slowly he reached for the animal's neck, gently touching an almost imperceptible scar behind his ear. "What did they do to you, buddy?" he whispered. "What happened after they separated?" "Us." Thor shuddered at the touch, but didn't back away. In his eyes, that brief flash of recognition appeared again, more intense this time, and along with it, something Ryan immediately recognized: fear. Whatever had happened to Thor during those years of separation had left marks far beyond the physical, and Ryan, while signing the adoption papers with determined hands, made a silent promise both to himself and to his old friend. He would discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The way back, home was silent. Thor remained motionless in the back seat of the car, his gaze fixed on the urban landscape passing by the window. Ryan observed him through the rearview mirror, trying to find in that animal some trace of the partner he had known years before. The rain now fell more lightly, creating a melancholic rhythm on the roof of the vehicle. "We're going to be okay, buddy," said Ryan, more to himself than to Thor. When they arrived at the apartment, Thor entered cautiously, as if he were in hostile territory. His movements were calculated, almost mechanical. Ryan observed as the dog sniffed every corner of the small space, always staying alert, as if expecting some kind of invisible threat. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. Lying in his bed, he heard Thor walking around the apartment, his paws producing a constant rhythm on the wooden floor. Every now and then the dog would stop, as if something had caught his attention, only to resume his endless patrol. In the morning, the phone rang again. It was Sarah. "So? Was it really Thor?" "Yes, it was him," replied Ryan, watching the dog, who was now sitting near the window, staring fixedly at the building across the street. "But something is very wrong, Sarah. He's not the same anymore." "What? Did you expect, Ryan? He went through traumatic situations just like you. Maybe he needs time." Ryan sighed. How to explain that Thor's behavior went beyond trauma? There was something methodical, almost programmed in his actions. "I'm going to take him to a specialized vet," decided Ryan. "I think that's a good idea. And you, how are you?" The question caught him off guard. Ryan hadn't thought about himself for so long that he had almost forgotten how to respond to this kind of concern. "I'm fine. Just worried about him." After the call, Ryan opened a box he kept stored in the back of the closet. There were his old medals, some documents, and, more importantly, photos from his time in the army. In one of them, he and Thor posed together, after a successful operation. The contrast between that confident animal in the photograph and the apprehensive creature in his apartment was devastating. Among the documents, Ryan found the contact for Dr. Williams, a military veterinarian who had cared for Thor during the years of service. He decided it was time to seek answers. Dr. Williams' office was in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. It was a discreet clinic without large signs or advertisements. Ryan arrived with Thor in the afternoon after scheduling an urgent consultation. "Ryan Parker," said the veterinarian when he saw him enter. His expression changed when he saw Thor. "And this is... it can't be." "It's him, Doctor. Thor." Dr. Williams adjusted his glasses, clearly disturbed. How is he with you? He should be at the Military Dog Rehabilitation Center." Ryan felt his blood boil. "I found him in a common shelter, abandoned like a stray dog." The veterinarian's expression was a mix of surprise and something else. Guilt, perhaps? "That's impossible. I myself signed his transfer to the MDRC after his retirement. He had a specific protocol to follow, special treatments." During the examination, Thor remained strangely submissive. Dr. Williams checked his reflexes, eyes, ears, and then found something that made him stop abruptly. This scar behind his ear. It wasn't here before. Ryan approached to see better. It was the same mark he had noticed at the shelter, now more visible under the clinic's light. "It looks recent, maybe from 1 to 2 years ago, and too precise to be accidental." "What does this mean, Doctor?" Dr. Williams hesitated, as if measuring his words. "Ryan, you know that our war dogs are valuable not only for their training, but for what they learn in the field. Thor was exceptional, even among the best. Ryan felt a growing unease. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I just find it strange that an elite dog, destined for a specific center, was found in a common shelter, with a surgical scar that wasn't in his records. After some additional tests and a blood test, Dr. Williams informed him that the results would be ready in a few days. Before leaving, Ryan couldn't resist one last question. Who was responsible for Thor after my discharge? The veterinarian seemed uncomfortable. The program underwent a restructuring. Many dogs were transferred to the supervision of Major William Anderson. That name caused Ryan to shiver. Major Anderson had a reputation for being extremely rigorous and, according to rumors, was a defender of controversial animal training methods. "Thank you, Doctor," said Ryan, leaving with Thor. On the way back, something in Thor's behavior changed. The dog seemed more agitated, repeatedly looking out the back window, as if looking for someone. Ryan also felt a strange sensation, as if they were being watched. Upon arriving home, he found Sarah waiting at the apartment door. She hugged her brother and then knelt before Thor, who remained impassive. "My God, Ryan, what happened to him?" "That's what I'm trying to find out." Once inside the apartment, Ryan shared his suspicions with his sister. "I think they did something to him, Sarah, something beyond military training." "What do you mean?" "Dr. Williams found a surgical scar that shouldn't be there, and his behavior, it's as if he's constantly waiting for a command, but at the same time, fighting against it." Sarah observed Thor, who was now standing near the window in the same position Ryan had found him in the morning. "What are you going to do?" Ryan took a deep breath. "I'm going to find out what happened at the so-called rehabilitation center, and why Thor never got there." That night, while Sarah slept on the couch, Ryan was awakened by a strange sound. He found Thor standing in the middle of the living room, trembling. His eyes, normally empty, now showed pure panic, and then, as if responding to an invisible command, the dog became completely motionless. Ryan approached slowly. "Thor, what is it, buddy?" That's when he noticed there was a man across the street watching his apartment. When he realized Ryan had seen him, the stranger quickly disappeared into the darkness. Thor remained paralyzed, like a living statue. Ryan tried to touch him, but the dog didn't respond. It was as if his mind were elsewhere, controlled by forces Ryan didn't understand. "What did they do to you?" he whispered, feeling a mix of anger and despair. "And why?" The answer, Ryan suspected, was with Major Anderson and the mysterious rehabilitation center that Thor never got to know. And he was determined to find out, even if it meant facing his own military past and the secrets he had left behind. The morning arrived with a clarity that contrasted with the shadows in Ryan's mind. After the night incident, he had barely managed to go back to sleep. The image of the man watching his apartment and Thor's reaction tormented him. Whoever it was, there was an undeniable connection with his canine partner's current state. Sarah was preparing coffee in the small kitchen while Ryan sat at the table researching on his laptop. Thor remained alert, positioned near the window like a tireless sentinel. "I found something about this rehabilitation center," said Ryan, turning the screen so that Sarah could see. "Officially, it's a facility linked to the Army, located in the Rocky Mountains. Supposedly, it's specialized in the recovery of military dogs after active service." Sarah leaned over to get a better look at the images. A discrete complex surrounded by green area, looking more like a laboratory than a veterinary center. "It looks more like a secret base than a hospital for dogs," she commented, serving the coffee. "Exactly," agreed Ryan. "And look at this. The center's director is Dr. Paul Richardson, but the operational supervisor is, let me guess, Major Anderson." Ryan nodded, his expression hardening. "The same one who, according to Dr. Williams, assumed responsibility for Thor after my discharge." Sarah sat down, thoughtful. "How do you plan to get there? It's not like you can just knock on the door of a military facility and ask for a tour." Ryan smiled for the first time in days, a smile that Sarah knew well, the kind that always preceded potentially dangerous decisions. I have some contacts from my army days, and not all of them follow protocols to the letter. After coffee, Ryan made a call to an old battalion companion, Sergeant Oliver, now retired like him, but who maintained influential friendships within the corporation. "Oliver, it's Ryan Parker. I need a favor." The conversation was brief but productive. Oliver not only remembered Thor, but also expressed surprise upon learning that the dog had been found in a common shelter. "That doesn't make sense, Parker. Those dogs have more strategic value than many soldiers out there. Someone would have to authorize the disposal." "That's exactly what I want to find out. I need to get into that center." There was a brief silence on the line. "I'll see what I can do, but be careful. If you're messing where you shouldn't..." "I'm already involved, Oliver. Someone was watching my apartment last night." "Jesus Christ, Parker. You always knew how to get into trouble." After hanging up, Ryan turned his attention to Thor. The dog seemed more agitated than usual, sniffing the air and moving nervously around the room. "What is it, buddy? Sensing something?" Sarah, who was observing the scene, frowned. "Ryan, don't you think it's dangerous to keep Thor here? If they're really after him..." "They're after both of us," corrected Ryan. "And I won't abandon him again, not after what I saw." The phone rang again, interrupting the conversation. It was Dr. Williams. "Ryan, I need you to come to the clinic immediately. The test results have arrived and there's something you need to see. In person." The urgent tone of the veterinarian alarmed Ryan. "We're on our way." During the trip to the clinic, Ryan noticed a black car that seemed to be following them at a distance. He decided to take a detour, confirming his suspicions when the vehicle continued on his trail. With precise maneuvers that recalled his days of military training, he managed to lose the pursuer. The clinic was strangely empty when they arrived. Dr. Williams received them personally, quickly leading them to a room in the back. "Close the door," he instructed, visibly nervous. "What I'm going to show you is highly confidential." Dr. Williams turned on a device that Ryan recognized as an advanced veterinary scanner. On the screen, the image of Thor's head appeared. "This is the result of the tomography we did yesterday. Look here, behind the ear, where we noticed the scar." Ryan and Sarah leaned in to observe. There was something under Thor's skin, something that definitely shouldn't be there. "What is that?" asked Sarah, horrified. "An implant," answered the veterinarian gravely. "So of a type I've never seen before. From the location and surgical precision, I would say it's some kind of neural device." Ryan felt his blood freeze. "Neural device? For what purpose?" Dr. Williams adjusted his glasses, visibly disturbed. "In theory, it could be used for monitoring, but given the complexity and positioning, Ryan, I believe it's a behavioral control device." The words fell like stones in the silence of the room. Ryan looked at Thor, who remained sitting calmly, as if he didn't understand that they were discussing something implanted in his own body. "Are you telling me that someone implanted a device to control Thor's actions?" "It's experimental technology," explained the veterinarian. "I've heard rumors about research in this area, using animals as prototypes. The idea would be to create perfectly controlled non-human soldiers, eliminating variables such as fear, hesitation, or disobedience." Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. "That's horrible. How can they do something like this?" "War," Ryan answered bitterly. "They always find ways to justify anything in the name of national security." Dr. Williams approached Thor, examining the scar again. "The most concerning thing is the sophistication of this. It's not amateur work. We're talking about advanced research, probably with official funding." "The Rehabilitation Center," concluded Ryan. "It was never about recovery. It was a laboratory to transform dogs like Thor into remotely controlled weapons." The veterinarian nodded somberly. "And now you understand why I'm nervous. This is not something we should know about." "Can we remove it?" asked Sarah hopefully. Dr. Williams hesitated. "Theoretically, yes, but without knowing exactly how it works, there are considerable risks. Besides, it would be destroyed evidence," completed Ryan, his military training guiding his thinking. "We need to expose this, not just for Thor, but for all the other animals that might be going through the same thing." The veterinarian seemed reluctant. "Ryan, we're talking about facing the army, people with enough power to make this disappear, and us along with it." At that moment, Ryan's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Oliver. "Got it. Tomorrow 10 a.m., maintenance entrance, east side. Look for Taylor." Ryan showed the message to Dr. Williams. "Tomorrow I'm going into the center. I want you to keep Thor until I get back." "Ryan, this is madness," protested Sarah. "You can't just invade a military facility." "I'm not going to invade. I'm going in through the back door, thanks to Oliver. I need to see with my own eyes what they're doing there." Dr. Williams seemed torn between fear and scientific curiosity. "If you go, I want to know exactly what you find. Any information about the device can help understand how to remove it safely." Ryan knelt before Thor, looking directly into his eyes. For an instant there seemed to be a glimmer of the old companion he had known. "I'm going to bring you back, buddy. Whatever they did, we're going to undo it." As they left the clinic, Ryan couldn't help but notice that Thor seemed calmer, as if he understood that something had changed, that there was hope. Or perhaps, he thought grimly, it was just the effect of the mysterious implant, controlling even the animal's emotions. One thing was certain: tomorrow Ryan would enter the heart of the shadows that haunted Thor, and what he would discover there would forever change his understanding of loyalty, war, and how far some were willing to go in the name of power. The morning mist covered the contours of the Rocky Mountains like a protective cloak. Ryan drove his jeep through increasingly narrow and winding roads, following the coordinates sent by Oliver. The GPS had lost signal several kilometers, but that mattered little. He had memorized the map. After leaving Thor in Dr. Williams' care, Ryan had spent the previous night meticulously preparing. In his trunk was a basic set of equipment: tactical flashlight, small camera, combat knife, and a disposable cell phone. He wore dark, discreet clothes, with nothing that could identify him. Sarah's words before his departure still echoed in his mind. "If you don't give news by nightfall, I'll activate Plan B." Plan B consisted of a sealed envelope with all the information they had discovered so far, which would be sent to an investigative journalist if something happened to Ryan. The jeep finally reached a small dirt road, almost imperceptible among the dense vegetation. As instructed, Ryan left the vehicle hidden and continued on foot for the rest of the way. After 20 minutes of cautious walking, he spotted the first signs of the installation: a discreet wire fence, strategically positioned security cameras, and warning signs about military property. Exactly at 10 a.m., Ryan found the maintenance entrance mentioned by Oliver, a small service door on the east side of the complex, partially covered by vegetation. A man was smoking carelessly near the entrance. "Taylor?" asked Ryan in a low voice. The man, middle-aged and with a tired expression, just nodded, putting out his cigarette with the sole of his boot. "Oliver said you'd come. I have 15 minutes to maintain the camera system. During that time, they'll be on a loop. Wear a lab coat and this badge." He handed Ryan a white uniform and an ID. "Follow Corridor B to the service elevator. Basement 2. Don't make prolonged eye contact with anyone. If asked, you're from the equipment maintenance team. Leave exactly the same way." Ryan put on the lab coat over his clothes and placed the badge. "Why are you helping me?" Taylor gave a bitter smile. "I've worked with military dogs for 20 years. What they do down there, it's not right. Now go. Time is running." With a nod of thanks, Ryan entered through the door that Taylor had just unlocked. The contrast between natural light and the artificial lighting of the corridor made his eyes take a few seconds to adjust. He followed the instructions meticulously, maintaining a confident but discreet posture, like someone who belonged to that place. The service elevator was old and noisy. When the doors opened at basement 2, Ryan was greeted by a radically different environment than the upper floor. There was no longer the appearance of a veterinary center. It was clearly a high-tech laboratory. Immaculate white walls, reinforced glass doors, and security positioned at strategic points. Taking advantage of the movement of some technicians, Ryan blended into the group, following them to a large central hall. What he saw there made his stomach turn: special containment cages, arranged in organized rows, each housing a military dog. Most were German shepherds and Rottweilers, all with the same empty expression he had recognized in Thor. Moving as if he were there to work, Ryan approached a momentarily unoccupied computer terminal. With the experience gained during his military training in intelligence operations, he quickly accessed some files. He discreetly photographed some screens with information about Project Cerberus, the official name of the program that transformed military dogs into remotely controlled weapons. As he moved through the laboratory, Ryan caught fragments of conversations between scientists. The Series B implant showed 92% effectiveness in the field test. We're still having problems with the resistance of some subjects. Major Anderson wants more consistent results before the presentation to the High Command. Suddenly, a familiar voice made Ryan freeze. The results from the last quarter are promising but still insufficient. It was Major William Anderson, walking a few meters ahead, accompanied by a man in a lab coat whom Ryan assumed to be Dr. Paul Richardson, director of the center. Instinctively, Ryan turned his back, pretending to check some nearby equipment. "The problem is the residual unpredictability, Major," replied the scientist. "Even with the implant, some subjects maintain a certain level of autonomy, especially those who developed strong bonds with their former human partners." Anderson made an impatient gesture. "That's why we implemented the complete isolation protocol after retirement, cut any previous emotional connection. Even so, we've had problematic cases. The most recent was 447T. Ryan felt his heart race. 447T was Thor's military code. "Ah yes, the escape case," commented Anderson with evident irritation. "How are we doing in recovering that problem?" "We haven't recovered the unit yet, but we've implemented the passive tracking protocol. The implant is still functional. We just can't activate full control remotely." "And what about the ex-partner, this Parker guy?" "Under surveillance, as ordered. It seems he recovered the dog recently." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't paranoia, they were really watching him. "Intensify the surveillance," ordered Anderson. "If necessary, we'll implement the Omega protocol for both." As the pair moved away, Ryan struggled to control his breathing. He needed to get out of there with the information he had gathered, but he wanted to know more about this so-called Omega protocol. He moved discreetly toward a side room where several monitors displayed data about the implants and the monitored dogs. A distracted technician had left a tablet unlocked on a bench. Quickly, Ryan took the opportunity to access more information. He found a folder titled Emergency Protocols and quickly photographed its contents. What he saw in the document about the Omega protocol froze his blood. It was a procedure for permanent deactivation, a euphemism for elimination of both the animal and anyone with unauthorized knowledge about the project. The sound of a sudden alarm interrupted his thoughts. It wasn't an invasion alarm, but seemed related to some internal procedure. The employees began to move hurriedly. "Collective control test in 5 minutes, announced a mechanical voice on the loudspeakers. "All non-essential personnel must leave Sector B." Ryan realized this was his chance to see the system in action. Following the flow of technicians heading to an observation area, he managed to position himself discreetly at the back of the room. Through a large glass panel, he saw a testing arena where several dogs had been released. All had the same scar as Thor, the mark of the implant. A test officer adjusted controls on a sophisticated panel. Initiating collective command sequence. What happened next was disturbing. As if they were puppets pulled by the same invisible hand, all the dogs assumed identical alert postures. Their eyes, previously empty, gained an intense, almost supernatural focus. At the operator's command, they executed synchronized maneuvers with mechanical precision, advance, retreat, attack specific targets. "Impressive," commented someone near Ryan. "The synchrony is almost perfect now." "Yes, but observe Unit 3, replied another technician. "There are still micro-hesitations in the more complex commands." Ryan mentally recorded every detail. The system apparently allowed individual or collective control, with commands sent directly to the neural implants of the animals. It wasn't just behavioral control, it was the complete subjugation of the dog's will. His watch indicated that he was almost 20 minutes beyond the time agreed with Taylor. He needed to leave immediately. Taking advantage of the movement after the test, he slipped out of the observation room and followed the path he had memorized. When he reached the service elevator, however, he found 2 security guards checking IDs. He quickly changed direction, opting for a nearby emergency staircase. He quickly climbed the 2 flights, trying to stay calm despite his racing heart. On the upper floor, he managed to locate another service exit. He was about to reach it when he heard Major Anderson's voice again, this time on the phone. Yes, confirmed. The Omega protocol for Unit 447T should be implemented immediately. As for the ex-partner, keep under surveillance until further notice. Ryan felt his blood freeze. They were planning to eliminate Thor, and possibly afterwards himself. Upon finally exiting through the side door, he found Taylor anxiously waiting. "You took too long," whispered the man. "The cameras returned to normal 10 minutes ago. You have to leave now." "Thank you," replied Ryan quickly. "One last thing. Have you ever heard of the Omega Protocol?" The expression on Taylor's face was answer enough. "My God, they activated that. Run, man, and don't come back." Ryan didn't need more encouragement. He ran back along the trail to his jeep, his mind racing with everything he had discovered. He needed to reach Dr. Williams's clinic as soon as possible. Thor was in immediate danger, and perhaps they all were. The jeep serpentined violently through the winding mountain roads. Ryan drove with an almost supernatural concentration, each tight curve demanding sharp reflexes. The disposable cell, phone placed in an improvised holder on the dashboard, rang insistently. "Ryan, is it you?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly. "Yes, I'm coming back. I discovered terrible things. They're going after Thor." "They already are. 2 men showed up at the clinic about 20 minutes ago. Dr. Williams managed to hide us in the back, but they're searching the place." Ryan felt a wave of panic. "Are you okay? And Thor?" "We're in the supply room. Thor is strange, more agitated than usual, as if he's sensing something we can't perceive." "The implant," muttered Ryan. "They must be trying to activate it remotely." "Listen, Sarah, you need to get out of there immediately. Go to the meeting point we agreed on." "Right, be careful, Ryan. I think it's not just those 2. The call ended abruptly. Ryan accelerated even more, ignoring the protests of the aging engine. The contingency plan he had devised with Sarah involved a safe location, their grandfather's old country house, abandoned for years, but still in condition to serve as a temporary hideout. A noise in the sky caught his attention. In the rear-view mirror, Ryan glimpsed a black helicopter that was rapidly approaching. It had no visible identification, but he knew exactly who was on board. He maneuvered the jeep off the main road, entering a very narrow dirt trail, partially hidden by vegetation. The vehicle jolted violently over the irregular terrain, but provided cover against aerial surveillance. While driving, images of what he had witnessed at the rehabilitation center flooded his mind. The clinical coldness with which they transformed loyal animals into controlled machines, the contempt for the consciousness and individuality of those beings that had served with such dedication, and, worst of all, the willingness to eliminate any obstacle, human or animal, that threatened the secrecy of the project. After about half an hour of evasive driving, Ryan managed to reach the main highway, blending into normal traffic. The helicopter had disappeared from his field of vision, but that didn't mean safety. He briefly stopped at a gas station where he discarded the used cell phone and bought another prepaid one. His first call was to Dr. Williams. "Doctor?" "It's Ryan." "Thank God. Your sister and Thor managed to leave before the situation worsened. Those men, they weren't just ordinary security. They knew exactly what they were looking for." "Where did they go?" "I'm not certain. Your sister didn't want to tell me, I believe, for safety reasons. She mentioned something about Grandpa's place." Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. Sarah was following the plan. "And you, Doctor? Are you safe?" There was a pause. "For now, I was interrogated, but maintained the story that Thor was just passing through for a routine checkup. I don't know if they believed it. Listen carefully. Don't go back to the clinic. Take the essentials and go somewhere where no one will find you for a few days. This is bigger and more dangerous than we imagined." After the call, Ryan continued his journey, now heading to his grandfather's country house, located on a small rural property on the outskirts of Aspen. The place had been abandoned for years since the patriarch's death, but he and Sarah had always maintained the property, more for sentimental value than any other reason. The dirt road leading to the property was almost completely overgrown. Ryan left the jeep hidden among trees about a kilometer from the house and continued on foot, taking care not to leave obvious tracks. As he approached the old wooden construction, he felt his heart tighten. Despite the abandonment, the house held precious memories of a simpler and happier childhood before he had chosen the military path that led him to conflict zones and eventually to meeting Thor. A low, rhythmic whistle, the code they had established, preceded his final approach. Sarah appeared on the porch, visibly relieved to see him. They hugged briefly before entering. The house was dusty and showed clear signs of abandonment, but Sarah had managed to make one of the rooms minimally habitable. Thor was lying in a corner, apparently calmer now, but his eyes followed Ryan's. Every movement. "How is he?" asked Ryan, approaching the dog cautiously. "Unstable," replied Sarah. "One moment he seems to recognize me, the next he becomes completely alert, as if hearing something we can't perceive." Ryan knelt before Thor, carefully studying his eyes. "The implant, they're trying to activate it remotely, but something is interfering." "What?" "I'm not sure, maybe the distance, or maybe—" Ryan hesitated, an idea forming in his mind. "Maybe it's Thor himself, resisting." Sarah looked doubtful. "Is that possible?" Dr. Williams mentioned that they had problems with dogs that formed strong bonds with their partners, and I heard something similar at the center, about residual unpredictability. As he spoke, Ryan extracted from his pockets the small storage devices where he had saved the images and documents collected during his infiltration. He connected them to an old laptop that Sarah had brought. "My God," she whispered, as the details of Project Cerberus were revealed on the screen. "They really transformed these animals into puppets." Ryan nodded gravely. "And not just that. Look at this." He opened a technical document about the neural implant. The device was much more sophisticated than they had initially imagined. In addition to allowing remote control of basic movements and behaviors, it also had the capacity for constant monitoring, transmission of biometric data, and more disturbingly, a deactivation mechanism that could be remotely triggered. "Deactivation?" asked Sarah, horrified. "A euphemism for execution. The implant can release a fatal electrical discharge directly into the brainstem if the animal is considered compromised or useless." Sarah covered her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. "That's why they're so desperate to recover Thor. He knows too much." "Not just that," corrected Ryan, showing another document. "Thor was considered the most successful prototype of the first generation of implants. His escape represents not only a risk of exposure, but the loss of a valuable asset for the project." Suddenly Thor stood up, completely alert. His muscles tensed and a low growl escaped his throat. Ryan and Sarah froze, watching the dog fix his gaze on the window. "What is it, buddy?" whispered Ryan. In response, Thor moved to the door, assuming a defensive posture. Seconds later, they heard the distant sound of an engine approaching. "Someone is coming," warned Sarah, quickly beginning to gather the scattered items. Ryan checked through the window crack. An unmarked military vehicle was approaching on the dirt road, still about half a kilometer away. "How did they find us so quickly?" questioned Sarah, distressed. The answer hit Ryan like a punch. "The implant, it's not just for control. It's a tracker. They're following Thor's signal." Sarah looked at the dog, who now seemed to be fighting against an invisible force, his body trembling as if under great tension. "What can we do? We can't remove the implant here." Ryan thought quickly. Years of military training in crisis situations guiding his reasoning. "We need to block the signal, something that interferes with the transmission." "Like what? We don't have equipment for that." Ryan remembered something he had seen in the technical documents. "Water. The implant has a vulnerability to interference when submerged, and the documents mentioned reception problems in structures with high metal concentration." A plan began to form in his mind. The house's basement. Grandpa kept old tools down there, many of them metal. And there was that old water tank. The spring reservoir, exclaimed Sarah, understanding. It should still be there. Quickly, Ryan gathered the most important documents and equipment. Let's go to the basement. With luck, the combination of water and metal will be enough to temporarily confuse the signal. Thor followed them obediently, although his behavior indicated he was under some kind of stress. On the way to the basement, Ryan noticed that the dog occasionally shook his head, as if trying to get rid of something uncomfortable. The basement was dark and damp, full of old tools and rusty machinery. In a corner, they found the old stone tank that collected water from the natural spring. It was still partially full, the water clean and cold. "This will have to do," said Ryan, guiding Thor near the tank. "We'll need something to improvise, a protection around his head, focusing on the implant location." Sarah found an old toolbox containing various small metal pieces. Ryan selected some, creating a kind of improvised shield that he carefully positioned behind Thor's ear, securing it with a bandage found in the first aid kit that Sarah always carried. "Now we need to wait," said Ryan, gently caressing Thor's head, "and pray that it works." Outside, the sound of the approaching vehicle became louder and then suddenly stopped. Male voices could be heard in the distance. Ryan looked into Thor's eyes, seeing in them a silent struggle, the animal fighting against the programming that tried to take control. For the first time since their reunion, Ryan was certain his partner was still there, hidden under layers of conditioning and invasive technology, but fighting to return. "We're in this together, buddy," he whispered. "And we'll get out together." As the footsteps approached the house, Ryan, Sarah, and Thor waited silently in the dark basement, knowing that what happened in the next few hours could determine not only their fates, but also expose a conspiracy that exceeded all ethical limits in the name of military advancement. The basement was immersed in an oppressive silence, interrupted only by the heavy footsteps echoing on the floor above. Ryan, Sarah, and Thor remained absolutely motionless, hidden among old tools and furniture, covered by dusty sheets. "Check every room," ordered an authoritative voice. "The signal is weak, but indicates they're in this area." Ryan immediately recognized the owner of that voice, Major Anderson. The man had come personally, which only reinforced the importance they placed on recovering Thor. Through small cracks in the floorboards, it was possible to glimpse fragments of military boots moving methodically through the house. Thor was surprisingly calm now. The combination of the improvised metal shield and the water from the tank seemed to be working, interfering with the implant's signal. Ryan observed his partner attentively, noticing something different in his eyes, a clarity he hadn't seen since their reunion, as if temporarily free from external influence. "It's working," whispered Sarah, almost inaudibly. Ryan nodded, but knew it was only a temporary solution. Eventually they would find the basement, and there was no alternative escape route. The only exit was the stairs leading to the kitchen, now occupied by the intruders. "The signal is unstable," reported another voice. "It interferes and reappears, as if something were blocking it." "Water or metal," responded Anderson. "The contingency protocols mention these vulnerabilities. Look for damp areas, pipes, anything that could serve as a shield." Ryan's heart accelerated. They knew exactly what to look for. It was only a matter of time until they came down to the basement. It was then that an idea occurred to him, risky, but possibly the only viable option. He leaned toward Thor, whispering words that he hoped the dog could still understand beyond the imposed programming. "Trust me, buddy, like in the old days." Without making noise, Ryan removed the metal shield from Thor. Almost instantly, the dog's eyes changed, the newly gained clarity giving way to a mechanical rigidity. But before the remote control could fully establish itself, Ryan dipped his own hand in the water tank and firmly pressed the implant location, keeping the area wet. "The signal has stabilized," announced someone upstairs. "First floor, south sector." It was the distraction they needed. The signal now erroneously indicated another location in the house. "Let's go," whispered Ryan to Sarah, indicating the basement stairs. While Anderson's men headed for the upper floor, Ryan, Sarah, and Thor silently slipped out of the basement. The kitchen was temporarily empty, offering a brief moment to escape through the back door. The exterior of the house was guarded by just one man, positioned near the vehicles. Ryan gestured for Sarah to crouch among the tall bushes that grew haphazardly around the property. "We need to neutralize him without alerting the others," muttered Ryan. Before he could elaborate a plan, however, Thor stepped forward. To Ryan's surprise, the dog was no longer under the implant's control, at least not completely. There was a determination in his movements that seemed to come from within, not from external commands. Thor advanced silently through the tall grass, a natural predator in his element. The guard, distracted with the radio, didn't notice the approach until it was too late. With a precise movement, Thor attacked, knocking the man down and immobilizing him without making excessive noise. Ryan ran to help, quickly neutralizing the guard with techniques learned in his military training. He used the man's own handcuffs to restrain him and gagged him with an improvised handkerchief. "How did Thor do that?" asked Sarah, perplexed. "I thought the implant controlled him." "I think it's exactly what the scientists feared," replied Ryan, looking admiringly at his partner. "The residual unpredictability. Thor is fighting against the programming." There was no time for celebrations, however. Ryan's jeep was too far away to be useful now, but the military vehicle offered a tempting alternative. Ryan quickly checked. The interior, the keys were in the ignition. "We can't use that," warned Sarah. "It must have a tracker." "Exactly," replied Ryan with a tense smile. "That's what we want them to think." Quickly he explained his plan. They would use the military vehicle to create a false trail, sending it in one direction while they went another way. It was risky, but could gain them the precious time they needed. While Sarah prepared the vehicle, Ryan worked quickly on Thor. Using the first aid kit and some tools found in the basement, he improvised a more durable protection for the implant. A small waterproof pouch containing water and metal fragments, firmly fixed behind the dog's ear. "This should confuse the signal for a few hours," he explained to Sarah. "Enough time for us to reach Dr. Williams." A noise coming from the house indicated they had discovered their absence from the upper floor. There was no more time to lose. "Now!" signaled Ryan. Sarah started the military vehicle's engine, adjusted the steering wheel with an iron bar to keep it in a constant direction, and quickly jumped out while Ryan released the brake. The vehicle began to descend down the dirt road, gaining speed. Anderson and his men emerged from the house in time to see the vehicle disappearing around the curve. As expected, they ran to their other transports, presuming that the fugitives were escaping in that direction. Ryan, Sarah, and Thor were already moving quickly through the dense woods, following a shortcut that only locals knew. The path would lead them to a secondary road, where they could hitchhike or find alternative transportation. After almost an hour of intense walking, they emerged near a small village. Ryan used the prepaid phone to call Dr. Williams, who agreed to meet them at a neutral point, an abandoned farm halfway between their current location and the city. They managed to get a ride with a local farmer who was heading to the nearest town. The man, accustomed to the presence of dogs on his property, didn't question much the exhausted appearance of the trio or the strange protection on Thor's head. During the journey in the back of the pickup truck, Ryan finally had a moment to examine the documents he had collected from the rehabilitation center more thoroughly. Among them, he found something he hadn't initially noticed, a list of civilian participants in the project, researchers and external funders to the army. "This is bigger than we imagined," he said to Sarah, showing her the documents. "It's not just an isolated military project. There are private companies involved, politicians. One name in particular caught his attention: Nexus Corporation, a technology company known for its work in human-machine interfaces. Next to the company's name, a note: Phase 2, Human Application. "My God," whispered Sarah, understanding the implication. The dogs are just the beginning. Ryan felt a chill down his spine. Project Cerberus wasn't just aimed at controlling animals. It was a testing ground for technology that would eventually be applied to humans. Remotely controlled soldiers, perhaps, or something even darker. Thor rested his head on Ryan's lap, his eyes now more alive, more present. The fight against the implant seemed to be giving him increasingly frequent moments of lucidity. Ryan gently caressed his neck, feeling the scar under his fingers. "We're going to get this out of you, buddy. And then we're going to expose all of them." When they arrived at the meeting point, Dr. Williams was already waiting for them. His car was discreetly parked at the back of the abandoned property, and he himself seemed nervous, constantly checking the surroundings. "We're being hunted, Doctor," Ryan quickly explained. "The project is much bigger than we thought." Dr. Williams examined the improvised protection on Thor's head, impressed with the ingenuity of the solution. "This explains why you managed to escape. Without the implant signal, they lost track." "Temporarily," corrected Ryan. "We need to remove the device permanently." The veterinarian hesitated. "I don't have adequate equipment here. I would need a surgical center, appropriate anesthesia." "And we can't go to a veterinary hospital without drawing attention," completed Sarah. It was then that Dr. Williams seemed to make a decision. "I have a friend, Dr. Mason. He runs an underground clinic for animals rescued from laboratories. He has experience with removing experimental devices. Can we trust him?" asked Ryan, cautious. "With our lives," assured Dr. Williams. "He's faced corporations before because of illegal animal testing. He's not afraid to take a stand." While they prepared to head to Dr. Mason's clinic, Ryan couldn't help but notice the strange expression that passed across Thor's face. For a moment, the dog seemed alert, tense, as if capturing something they couldn't perceive. "What is it, buddy?" he asked, kneeling beside the animal. Thor fixed his eyes on Ryan's, and for the first time since their reunion, there was total recognition there. Not a brief flash, but a complete connection, like in the days of service. It was as if momentarily the true Thor had fully returned. And then the dog looked beyond Ryan, toward the dirt road leading to the farm. Seconds later, they heard the distant sound of engines approaching. "They found us," said Sarah, alarmed. Dr. Williams quickly indicated another direction. "There's a secondary road through the back. My car has little gas, but it should be enough to reach the main highway." As they moved quickly toward the vehicle, Ryan looked one last time at the road from where the sound of engines was coming. In his mind, formed the certainty that the true battle was just beginning. Dr. Williams' car accelerated down the dirt road at the back, raising a cloud of dust that could betray their escape, but it was a necessary risk. Thor sat in the back seat, between Ryan and Sarah, his body tense like a spring, ready for action. "If we can reach Dr. Mason's clinic, we'll have a chance," said Dr. Williams, his eyes nervously alternating between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. "He has connections that can help us, not only with the implant, but also with publicizing what we've discovered." Ryan nodded silently. In the rearview mirror, he saw the headlights of military vehicles arriving at the abandoned farm. For now, they had gained some advantage, but for how long? Major Anderson was not a man to give up easily, especially with so much at stake. "We need a plan B," said Ryan. "If they reach us before the surgery, or if something goes wrong." "Don't think about that now," interrupted Sarah, placing her hand on his shoulder. "One step at a time." Ryan knew she was right, but he couldn't help anticipating problems. It was his military training, constantly assessing risks and preparing contingencies. As the car advanced through the night, he made a silent promise to Thor and to himself. No matter the cost, that conspiracy would be exposed, and his partner would be free again. Dr. Mason's clinic had no external identification. Located at the back of an old industrial warehouse on the outskirts of Denver, it appeared at first glance just another abandoned storage facility. They arrived shortly before dawn after a tense journey, constantly checking if they were being followed. Dr. Williams parked the car at the back and knocked on a metal door following a specific pattern. 3 short knocks, pause, 2 knocks. Seconds later, a small opening slid, revealing a pair of suspicious eyes. "Williams? Wasn't expecting you." "Emergency, Mason. We need to get in, now." The door opened, revealing a middle-aged man, graying hair and a tired appearance. His eyes, however, demonstrated acute vivacity and intelligence. He quickly checked the surroundings before allowing them to enter. "Quick, we're very exposed here." Once inside, Ryan was surprised by the contrast. What appeared to be an abandoned warehouse from outside was in fact a modern and well-equipped veterinary clinic. In some enclosures, various animals were recovering from procedures, most appearing to have been rescued from situations of abuse or experiments. "This is Dr. Mason," introduced Williams, "one of the few who still fight for the right side." Mason examined the group with caution. "Williams warned me about you, said you had something important to show." Ryan nodded, placing his document folder on a table. "We need your help, Doctor, and also your discretion." While Mason examined the Project Cerberus documents, his expression alternated between horror and indignation. At the same time, Williams showed him the improvised protection on Thor's head and explained the implant situation. "I've seen terrible things in my career, but this—" Mason shook his head, indignant. "Using animals as prototypes for neural control, with the intention of applying it to humans later? It's monstrous." "Can you remove it?" asked Ryan, indicating Thor's implant. Mason approached the dog, who remained surprisingly calm, as if understanding that this man was there to help him. Carefully, the veterinarian examined the surgical scar and the small volume perceptible under the skin. "It's possible, but risky. The device seems to be deeply integrated into the neural tissue. Removing it incorrectly could cause permanent damage." "What are the chances of success?" asked Sarah, apprehensive. "Without a more thorough examination, I can't guarantee, but I'd say 70% chance of removal without serious sequelae." Ryan looked at Thor. The dog returned his gaze with an intensity that expressed more than words. Good. There was trust there, the same trust that had united them in distant battlefields. "He deserves that chance," decided Ryan. "When can we do this?" "I need a few hours to prepare everything," replied Mason, "and we need to verify the structure of the implant more thoroughly. In the documents you brought, are there technical specifications?" Ryan nodded, indicating some specific pages. "Here. It includes diagrams of the implantation, surgery, and the device structure." While the veterinarian studied the technical documents, Ryan, Sarah, and Thor were led to a small restroom at the back of the clinic. It was far from comfortable, but offered a moment of relative safety after days of constant flight. "You think we'll succeed?" asked Sarah, her voice betraying the accumulated fatigue. Ryan observed Thor, who was now sleeping lightly on the floor near them. "We have to succeed, not just for him, but for all the others." "And after Anderson. And the Project Cerberus people won't simply give up. After, we'll expose everything," declared Ryan, his determination unshakable. "The documents I collected, Dr. Williams's testimony, the physical evidence of the implant once removed, enough to cause a scandal that not even the most powerful will be able to suppress." Hours later, Dr. Mason returned. His expression was serious but determined. "We're ready. We analyzed the structure of the implant, and I believe we can remove it safely. But I need you to understand the risks. The device was designed to make removal difficult. There's a security system that can activate the deactivation if it detects unauthorized manipulation." "Is there any way to deactivate this security system first?" asked Ryan. "Theoretically, yes. The diagrams show a specific point in the device that, if deactivated first, would neutralize the security mechanism. The problem is reaching it without triggering the system." Ryan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. "What's your sincere recommendation, Doctor?" Mason thought for a moment. "If it were just a common veterinary procedure, I would recommend not risking it. But considering the circumstances, the fact that they can activate the deactivation remotely at any moment, and what this dog means for this entire conspiracy, I believe the risk is justifiable." At that moment, Thor stood up and approached, Ryan placing his head on his knee. The simple gesture, so characteristic of the old Thor, sealed the decision. "Let's do it," said Ryan, caressing his partner's head. The operating room was prepared. Modern equipment, some clearly non-conventional, dominated the environment. Dr. Mason had called in a trusted assistant, Dr. Natalie, a specialist in veterinary neurosurgery. "We've created a localized interference field," explained Mason, showing a small device. This should prevent any communication from the implant during surgery, avoiding it from transmitting alerts or receiving the deactivation command. Thor was gently sedated. Ryan remained by his side until the last moment of consciousness, whispering words of comfort. Sarah held his hand when they finally had to leave the operating room. "He'll make it," she assured him. "Thor is strong. He always has been." The following hours were the longest in Ryan's life. Each minute seemed an eternity as they waited in the hallway. Occasionally, Dr. Williams would come out to give updates, always cautious but encouraging. "They're almost there," he informed at one point. "The device is exposed. Now comes the most delicate part, deactivating the security system before complete removal." More time passed. Ryan paced back and forth, unable to remain seated. That's when he heard a commotion coming from the clinic. Entrance, Dr. Williams ran to check, returning with an alarmed expression. "We have visitors. 2 men in a black car parked across the street. They seem to be watching the place." Ryan's heart raced. "Anderson found us." "Not necessarily," replied Williams. "They could just be ordinary surveillance. This place has been targeted before due to Mason's work with rescued animals." Even so, Ryan knew they couldn't risk it. How much longer to finish the surgery? Impossible. To be precise, it could be a matter of minutes or another hour. Sarah, who was observing through the window, warned, "They're getting out of the car." Ryan made a quick decision. "I'll distract them, buy time." "Ryan, no," protested Sarah. "It's too dangerous." "More dangerous is allowing them to interrupt the surgery now," he replied firmly. "Take care of Thor if something goes wrong." Before Sarah could protest again, Ryan headed for the back exit. His plan was simple: attract the men's attention away from the clinic, allowing the surgery to be completed safely. Upon exiting into the alley, Ryan immediately recognized one of the men, an agent he had seen at the rehabilitation center. There were no more doubts. Anderson had found them. Instead of fleeing, Ryan decided on the direct approach. He walked purposefully within sight of the men, and when he noticed he had been spotted, began running in the opposite direction from the clinic. As expected, the men followed him. The chase extended for several blocks, Ryan using his knowledge of urban combat to maintain sufficient distance, neither so close that he could be captured, nor so far that they would lose his trail. Meanwhile, at the clinic, the surgery entered its final phase. Dr. Mason, with millimetric precision, had managed to deactivate the implant's security system and now proceeded with the complete removal. "We did it," he finally announced, depositing the small device in a metal tray. "It's out, and the vital signs remain stable." Sarah, who was watching from the waiting room window, cried with relief, but her joy was quickly replaced by concern. There was no sign of Ryan. After more than an hour of pursuit, Ryan had managed to lose the agents and was returning to the clinic by an alternative route. He was exhausted with some cuts and abrasions, but satisfied for having provided the necessary time. Upon entering again through the back door, he was greeted by Sarah, who hugged him tightly. "It worked," she whispered. "The implant is out. Thor is recovering." The news was all Ryan needed to hear. He let himself fall into a chair, physical relief mixing with emotional exhaustion. Dr. Mason appeared, still wearing his surgical scrubs, holding the removed implant in a special container. "It's yours," he said, handing the container to Ryan. Physical evidence of what they did. Ryan observed the device with a mixture of fascination and repulsion. So small and yet capable of completely controlling a living being. The idea that they planned to apply similar technology to humans was terrifying. "When can I see him?" he asked. "He's in recovery, still sedated but stable. In a few hours he should wake up." While they waited, Ryan, Sarah, and the veterinarians discussed the next steps. The evidence they possessed was explosive. Internal project documents, testimonies from respected professionals, and the removed implant itself. "We need to decide how we're going to expose this," said Ryan, "and we need to do it in a way that they can't suppress or discredit." "I have contacts in the international press," offered Dr. Mason, "people who aren't afraid to face the powerful. And I have connections with animal rights groups that can amplify the complaint," added Dr. Natalie. While they elaborated the strategy, Dr. Williams urgently called them to the recovery room. Thor was awakening from anesthesia, earlier than expected. Ryan ran to his partner's side. The dog opened his eyes slowly, visibly disoriented from the anesthesia. For a tense moment, Ryan feared that the surgery hadn't restored the Thor he had known. Then their eyes met. There was no more that distant fog, that invisible barrier. Thor's eyes shone with total recognition, with the same intelligence and loyalty that Ryan remembered from their service days. "Hey, buddy," whispered Ryan. His voice choked with emotion. "You're back." In response, Thor moved weakly, still affected by the anesthesia, but with enough determination to gently lick Ryan's hand. The simple gesture, so characteristic of their old connection, brought tears not only to Ryan, but to everyone present. "Welcome back," said Ryan, gently embracing the dog's neck. In that moment, as Thor genuinely returned, not just in body, but in spirit, Ryan knew that the true battle was just beginning. The implant had been removed, but the conspiracy that created it still needed to be exposed. And now, with Thor truly by his side again, he was ready to face whatever came. 3 weeks had passed since the implant's removal. Thor was recovering surprisingly well at Dr. Mason's beach house, an isolated refuge on the California coast. Each day, signs of the old Thor became more evident. The confident posture, the attentive look, the way he slightly tilted his head when something caught his attention. Ryan observed his partner running on the damp morning sand, chasing seagulls, with no real intention of catching them, just for the pleasure of movement, of recovered freedom. The surgical scar behind Thor's ear was beginning to disappear under the fur that was growing back. "He seems happy," commented Sarah, approaching with 2 cups of coffee, "like in the old days." Ryan accepted the drink without taking his eyes off the dog. "Not exactly like in the old days. He's different, more present in a way. As if he values each moment in a way he didn't before." Sarah smiled. "I think that applies to both of you." She was right. The experience had transformed Ryan, too. The ex-military man who lived in isolation, tormented by war memories, now had a purpose that transcended his own issues, exposing the truth, protecting Thor, and preventing other animals from suffering the same fate. The plan they had elaborated was in full swing. The Project Cerberus documents had been sent simultaneously to investigative journalists in 3 different countries, accompanied by video testimonies from Dr. Williams and Dr. Mason. The implant itself, removed from Thor, had been meticulously analyzed and documented by an independent team of scientists. Inside the house, on the living room table, Ryan's laptop displayed preliminary news that was beginning to emerge. They were still cautious reports, without mentioning specific names, but the first ripples of what promised to be a media tsunami. "I received a message from Oliver," said Ryan, coming back inside. "The atmosphere at the military base is tense. There's been unusual movement at the rehabilitation center in the last few days, documents being removed, equipment transferred." "They're trying to cover everything up," concluded Sarah. "Too late," replied Ryan, showing the email he had just received. The main journalist from the international network confirmed the complete report will air tomorrow, simultaneously in 12 countries. A happy bark announced Thor's return to the porch. The dog shook himself, spreading sand and seawater before settling at Ryan's feet, panting but visibly satisfied. Dr. Mason, who had joined the group for breakfast, observed the scene with a smile. "His latest exams are excellent. The region where the IT implant was is healing perfectly, and there are no signs of permanent neurological damage. A miracle considering what they did to him," commented Dr. Williams, who regularly visited to monitor Thor's recovery. The secure phone they used for important communications rang. It was one of the journalists involved in the investigation. "Mr. Parker, we need to confirm some details before publication. And there's something you should know. We've secured an inside informant from Project Cerberus." Ryan felt a chill down his spine. "Who?" "I can't reveal the name over the phone, but it's someone from Major Anderson's inner circle, someone who didn't agree with the directions the project was taking, especially with Phase 2. The mentioned Phase 2, the application of neural control technology to humans, was the most terrifying aspect of the entire conspiracy. What did this informant reveal? Documents that prove preliminary tests on humans. Volunteers, supposedly, but the documentation suggests they weren't fully informed about what was being tested. The news fell like a bomb among those present. Ryan hung up the phone after a few additional minutes of conversation, his face pale. "They've already started," he said gravely. "The human tests. Apparently, they used war veterans with PTSD as the first subjects, promising an experimental treatment for their trauma." Sarah covered her mouth in shock. "That's inhuman. And it will make the exposure even more powerful," commented Dr. Mason. "It's no longer just about military dogs. It's about vulnerable people being exploited." That night, as the house gradually quieted, Ryan remained on the porch, contemplating the nocturnal ocean. Thor rested by his side, occasionally raising his head to check the surroundings, a habit from his service days that remained, even after everything. "Tomorrow everything comes to light, buddy," whispered Ryan, caressing the dog's head. "It won't be easy. They'll try to discredit everything, diminish the importance, maybe even accuse us of treason." Thor looked at him with those eyes that seemed to understand every word. "But it's worth it," continued Ryan. "For you, for the other dogs, for the veterans who are being used without knowing. Someone needs to take a stand." Dawn brought with it the expected media earthquake. The main report aired as planned, accompanied by complimentary articles in various press outlets. Project Cerberus was exposed in all its disturbing reality: the neural implants in military dogs, the plans for application in humans, the civilian financiers involved. As expected, the official reaction was categorical denial, followed by accusations against the whistleblowers. The Department of Defense issued a statement classifying the allegations as absurd and unfounded, while Nexus Corporation denied any involvement in unethical or illegal research. But the evidence was too solid to be simply dismissed, especially after the additional leak of documents about tests on veterans, which generated indignation among associations of retired military personnel and human rights groups. At noon, Ryan received an unexpected phone call. "Parker, it's Taylor." "Taylor, how did you get this number?" "Does that matter? Listen, things are boiling over here. Anderson is convening an emergency meeting with all project personnel. They say he's furious, accusing everyone of leaking." Ryan felt a pang of concern. "Are you safe?" "For now, I'm not on his radar yet, but that's not what I'm calling about. It's about what's happening now. They're destroying evidence, Ryan. Everything that's left of the research, the other dogs, the records of human tests. We need to stop this. Are there still animals with implants there?" "Yes, about 12, and from what I heard, the order is to dispose of them." The word sent a chill through Ryan. Dispose of them was the euphemism used in the project to eliminate animals considered compromised. "I need your help, Taylor. We need to save those dogs." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I knew you'd say that. I have a plan, but it's risky." In the following hours, Ryan, Dr. Mason, and Dr. Williams quickly elaborated a rescue operation. Taylor would be their inside man, providing access and critical information. Various contacts from the animal rights world were mobilized to ensure emergency transportation and shelter for the rescued dogs. "I don't like this," protested Sarah, when Ryan explained that he would personally go on the operation. "It's too dangerous for you to appear there now." "I have no choice," he replied. "I know the center, I know how the dogs are kept, and more importantly, I know how the implants work, if any of them are remotely activated during the rescue." The argument was interrupted by Thor, who approached with something Ryan had never seen before, an almost insistent behavior, repeatedly placing himself between them. "What is it, buddy?" asked Ryan, confused. Dr. Williams observed the scene with interest. "I think he's trying to say something. Ryan, you mentioned that Thor had advanced training for tactical operations, right?" "Yes, he specialized in infiltration and reconnaissance. Then maybe he's trying to communicate that he wants to participate." The idea seemed absurd at first glance, taking Thor back to the place where he had suffered so much. But when Ryan looked into the dog's eyes, he saw something he couldn't ignore: determination. the same look he had known during difficult missions in the past. "You really want to go, don't you?" he asked softly. Thor barked once, decided. He could be. "Valuable," pondered Dr. Mason. "He knows the location, and more importantly, he knows the other dogs. He could help calm them during the rescue." The operation was set for the following dawn. While the preparations were being finalized, unexpected news emerged. Major Anderson had been temporarily removed from command by the military high command, pending internal investigation. It was the first sign that the complaints were being taken seriously at the highest levels. On the night before the operation, Ryan spent hours reviewing the plans with the small rescue team. Thor remained attentive to every detail, as if perfectly understanding what was at stake. "We have a window of approximately 20 minutes, explained Ryan, indicating the map of the facility. "Taylor will deactivate the security system at 2:10 a.m. We'll have to enter, locate the dogs in the basement, neutralize any remaining personnel, and leave before the automatic backup system becomes operational." Dr. Mason, who had insisted on participating personally to assess the medical conditions of the dogs, nodded gravely. "We're prepared to sedate the animals that are agitated or under active control of the implants." When everyone withdrew to rest in the few hours remaining, before the operation, Ryan remained alone with Thor on the porch. The sea was calm, contrasting with the storm forming inside him. "We're doing the right thing, buddy," he said more to himself than to the dog. "But I'm worried about you. Going back to that place, after everything you suffered." Thor rested, his head on Ryan's knee, in a gesture that conveyed more than words could. Trust, courage, the certainty that, together, they could face anything. At dawn, the team headed to the rehabilitation center. The vehicle they used was a legitimately borrowed veterinary van with genuine medical equipment, a perfect cover in case they were intercepted. As planned, Taylor met them at the maintenance entrance. His face showed tension but determination. "System deactivated," he confirmed, "but we have a problem. There are still 2 guards in the basement. They weren't on the schedule." Ryan nodded. "We can handle that. Non-lethal, just containment." Thor, equipped with a special tactical vest developed by Dr. Mason, was surprisingly calm upon returning to the site of his suffering. There was no fear in his posture, only resolution. The infiltration occurred exactly as planned. With Thor leading the way, they quickly reached the basement, where the guards were neutralized without excessive violence. The biggest challenge came when they found the dogs, all with implants identical to what Thor had had, all with the same empty and controlled look. "My God," whispered Dr. Mason upon seeing the conditions. "This is worse than we imagined." Thor approached the cages, silently communicating with the other dogs in a way that humans couldn't completely understand. His presence seemed to have a calming effect, as if they instinctively recognized in him an equal who had been freed. While Dr. Mason and his team worked quickly to sedate and prepare the dogs for transport, Ryan discovered something disturbing in an adjacent room. Documents that hadn't been destroyed yet, detailing the next phase of human tests. The list of volunteers included names of veterans he personally knew. "Ryan, we need to go," warned Taylor. "The backup system will restart in 5 minutes." With military efficiency, the team completed the rescue. All 12 dogs were transferred to the van, properly sedated and monitored. When they left the center exactly 19 minutes after entering, Ryan felt an enormous weight lifting from his shoulders. Thor sat beside him during the journey back, vigilant even after the mission's success. Occasionally, he would look at the other dogs, as if assuring them that everything would be fine now. In the following weeks, the story of Project Cerberus continued to unfold publicly. The combination of media exposure, physical evidence, and the spectacular rescue of the remaining dogs created an impossible pressure to ignore. A congressional inquiry committee was established to investigate the project and those responsible. Major Anderson was officially removed and later indicted, along with other involved officers. Nexus Corporation faced shareholder lawsuits and a federal investigation into unethical practices. For Ryan and Thor, however, the greatest victory wasn't in the political or legal developments, but in the recovery of the rescued dogs. Under the care of Dr. Mason and a dedicated team of veterinarians, all underwent surgeries to remove the implants. The recovery process would be long. Some showed deep psychological trauma, but there was hope. On a sunny afternoon, 2 months after the rescue, Ryan observed Thor interacting with some of the recovered dogs in a large green space. The property, acquired with donations after the exposure of the case, now served as a rehabilitation center for animals rescued from experimentation. "He's amazing," commented Sarah, approaching. "A true leader for them." Ryan smiled, seeing how Thor gently guided a younger German shepherd, still hesitant in his post-surgery movements. "He knows exactly what they're going through. I think that creates a connection that we, humans, can't fully establish." Dr. Mason, who was supervising the outdoor therapy session, approached with encouraging news. "The Ethics Committee has officially approved our rehabilitation program. We'll receive federal funding to expand the treatment." "And the human tests?" asked Ryan, still concerned about that aspect of the conspiracy. "All procedures have been halted," assured the veterinarian. "And even better, we've developed a verification protocol to identify similar implants in patients who may have been subjected to them without full knowledge." As they talked, Thor returned to Ryan's side, his guidance mission temporarily complete. The ex-military man knelt, embracing his companion's neck with genuine emotion. "We did it, buddy," he whispered in his ear. "You came back to me, and together, we brought the others back too." Thor responded with a look that Ryan knew well, that silent communication that transcended words, that absolute trust forged in extreme circumstances and strengthened by unimaginable trials. In that serene moment under the afternoon sun, Ryan understood a profound truth. War really shaped both men and animals, as he had always believed. But what he hadn't realized before was that after the war, after the trauma and pain, there was still space for healing, for redemption. Thor wasn't just a survivor, but a symbol of resilience, living proof that even in the darkest circumstances, the essence of being remains untouched, waiting for the moment to resurface. And as he watched the rescued dogs playing freely for the first time in years, Ryan knew that his true mission was just beginning, no longer as a soldier, but as a guardian of those who couldn't defend themselves alone. With Thor by his side, he felt ready for any challenge the future might bring. The journey to recover Thor had transformed into something much greater, a crusade for dignity